Hello and welcome to Spectator TV. I'm William Moore, the Spectator's features editor.
And I'm Lara, Prendergast, the Spectator's executive editor.
We're going to be talking about Trump's state visit next week and what to expect. And we're delighted to be joined by the Spectator's political editor, Tim Shipman, who has just written his excellent cover piece in this week's Spectator, just gone to print in all its glory, Royal Treatment, Tim Shipman on what Trump really wants. Tim, thank you very much indeed for joining us.
Pleasure.
So, Tim, the word that everyone is using about this state visit is that it's unprecedented, because it's a second state visit for a second-term president. So, if it is unprecedented, how has Trump managed to get it?
Well, because the British government is desperate to butter up Donald Trump and has been from the second he got re-elected. He's completely recasting, the whole of Western politics and the whole of global affairs. And they knew that that was likely to happen because during the campaign, Trump was very forward about how he was planning to shake things up. And unlike a lot of politicians, and somewhat to the regret of some of the Western leaders, he's continued to do exactly that since he got in. So one of Starmer's successes, I think, has been to get alongside Trump early, to read the runes, and to generally get him pointing in the direction the British government would like. And so the trip, the state visit is very much about not only trying to get Donald Trump feeling warm about Britain, but accepting some of the kind of points of view that the British government has on certain issues, but also to take advantage of the big fact with Donald Trump that this is a guy who loves doing deals. On the wall of the West Wing in the White House now is a picture of Trump signing the executive order which instituted the Anglo-American trade deal. And what my piece goes into some detail on is the fact that there's a tech deal coming next week. And this is seen, I think, as Labour is desperate to get growth. So anything that suggests, collaborative working with the Americans, billions of pounds/dollars of investment in all the latest technologies, that's all good news for the economy. But more than that, I think it's about aligning with America in what is becoming a pretty clear global battle between America and China for kind of global dominance, with Britain and the other sort of English-speaking democracies around the world and parts of Europe aligned against China, Russia, Iran, North Korea, and all the sort of autocracies. So they see this as a way of trying to get a jump on the technologies that will put us ahead of the game.
And as your piece says on the cover, it's promising to tell us what Trump wants. Obviously, there are the politics here, but what about the pomp? And what role is the king going to be playing in all of this?
Oh, a big one. And Nigel Farage went to see Donald Trump in the Oval Office and found him in good spirits. He's feeling pretty upbeat about not having much opposition at home, but what he and Melania are most looking forward to is going to Windsor. And a rather cheeky member of the government said, after having been forced to stay in Buckingham Palace last time, this is a step up. This is going from the office to the sort of prized royal residence. And Farage filled in Trump on all the history of the place. So they're hitting him with Windsor, with a state dinner in St George's Hall, with a guard of honour. And then the following day, that's all on the Wednesday. The pomp is Wednesday and the politics is Thursday. And Thursday he goes to Chequers. There'll be a press conference. There'll be a working lunch. There will be a tour which will take in all the stuff about Winston Churchill, who did a lot of his wartime speeches from the Hawtrey Room in Chequers. When Trump first came in 2018, he got to stay in Blenheim Palace, which was where Churchill was born. Now he gets to see where Churchill worked. And we're told also that there will be some private time between the Trumps and the Starmers, just the four of them having what can only be an astonishing meeting of minds, I'm sure.
Yes. So one of the things that we read a lot about is, of course, MAGA world's kind of obsession at the moment with Britain, particularly free speech in Britain. I mean, Elon Musk tweets about it a lot. J.D. Vance brings it up a lot. Is the government worried at all that Trump might say something in the state visit, quite derogatory about Britain and the current state of free speech, and that's a sort of mine that could blow up?
Look, I think the government is aware that it might, But the interesting thing is, I think they're not as worried about this as perhaps they have been on previous Trump visits. I think they think that the president mouthing off is a bit of a sort of priced-in thing, even with the public these days, and you don't necessarily. His bark is sometimes worse than his bite. The last time he was here in July to see his Scottish golf courses, he was asked relentlessly about freedom of speech. There was a kind of rolling press conference up at Turnberry, and GB News's Bev Turner was constantly asking, she kind of pressed him quite hard. And he was quite polite about it. He said, yes, of course it's an important issue, but I like Keir Starmer, and he was bold enough to do a trade deal with me, and that gets my vote. And there are clearly opportunities where Trump can cause all sorts of disruption. It is rumoured that there will be another GB News interview. I'm told he likes GB News, but he loves Beverly Turner, which is an interesting puts an interesting spin on who might land that big interview. There'll be a press conference, and there's lots of opportunity for him to say all sorts of inappropriate things. Britain is, we're told, likely to recognise a Palestinian state the week after. The Americans certainly don't agree with that. I'm told by one of our diplomats that it has been agreed that we will sort of cordially disagree in public prior to the state visit. The Brits are hoping that that's a state of affairs that continues after the state visit. But all this stuff could come up. But I think there's a general feeling that Trump is actually more strategic and more polite a lot of the time than he's given credit for. Offered the chance to kick the what's-it out of Theresa May. He seized it with gusto with both hands because he didn't like her very much. But Farage is telling people in Reform that, after he saw the president really does like Starmer. Yeah. And that's fine, I'm told, Farage said. Yeah. Sort of said through gritted teeth. I should think it doesn't think he thinks it's fine at all. But, Trump will be wowed by the royals, will want to sort of be helpful, I think, as best as he can be to Starmer within the boundaries of, being honest about what he thinks. And I think, I think the government's view is that there might be some squalls like this, but at the end of the day, if we can get a decent tech deal, the kind of deal that you probably wouldn't have got if we hadn't had Brexit, and Trump supports Brexit and wants to reward Britain for that, and wants to reward Britain for being not just the land of his mother's birth, but we're told now that J.D. Vance has been taking genealogical tests. Lots of Americans always like to pretend and boast that they're Irish roots. It turns out lots of the MAGA tech people and Vance himself have had genealogical tests, and they're all discovering they're English. And that has sort of created a general warmth. Vance was here over the summer, stayed in the Cotswolds for his summer holiday. He had plenty of opportunities to say more about this and didn't. So there's a lot of dogs that didn't bark.
Well, also a little like Trump's perhaps slightly unexpected affection for Keir Starmer, given the difference of their politics. It sounds to me, especially from reading your piece, that that J.D. Vance has somewhat of an affection for David Lammy.
Yeah, I think that's right. I mean, Lammy early on worked out, I think before a lot of people in Britain did, that Trump was likely to win the election, and thought, well, who do we need to get alongside? And they tried to pick winners. They tried to work out who might be the Secretary of State and who might be the National Security Advisor. They didn't get their guesswork right all the time, but one of the key figures they did realise was going to play a large role was Vance. And Lammy made a point of getting to know him, and they have, I'm told they speak at least once a week. And Lammy's been sort of turfed out of the Foreign Office and made Justice Secretary, but he's also been given this titular role of Deputy Prime Minister, which will involve some deputising on the international stage for Starmer. And he's likely to go to the UN General Assembly. There's a few other things where he'll trot in, but I think Lammy wants to keep his toe in international waters. I understand that, nobody in the British government has a relationship with the Vice Premier of China, so Lammy will go and try and pursue that. And I'm told he will continue to speak, I think Lammy hopes once a week, to Vance, to keep that sort of line of communication open as well.
We should probably talk about the role of our ambassador,
yes.
Lord Mandelson. Obviously, that, as Freddie Gray writes in
Speaking of media squall.
Freddie Gray has written a companion piece to your cover piece, looking at that and how the kind of ghost of Epstein is going to be haunting this trip. How's that going to play into all of this? Well,
it's playing into it in a very embarrassing way for the government. A week ago, the Prime Minister lost the Deputy Prime Minister, Angela Rayner, and it now, depending on when you view this episode, it may be that he's on the verge or has already lost his ambassador to the United States. Some of the stuff that's emerged from the Epstein files has shown Mandelson sending frankly, fairly ill-judged kind of missives to Epstein. And he gave an interview on Tuesday to Harry Cole at The Sun, who's got a news show in America, basically pleading, saying, I made a mistake. I shouldn't have been friends with him. I shouldn't have remained friends with him as long as I did. I, like a lot of other people, was lied to by Epstein about what he'd done and whether he was responsible for the stuff he was accused of. The subtext there, of course, is that the President of the United States is another of the people who's been lied to, and the exquisite pain that people in Downing Street were going through on Wednesday afternoon is that they don't want to lose Peter Mandelson. Almost everybody agrees he's been a very good ambassador. The Americans seem to like him, despite the rumours at the start that Trump was going to block him. Mandelson is a very canny political operator and has got alongside the White House, and the tech deal that supposedly will emerge from the state visit is in a large part, driven by Mandelson's enthusiasm. But in Downing Street, they're sort of looking at it and thinking this looks politically untenable. But if we get rid of Peter Mandelson, does that, by implication, mean we think that Trump himself has behaved impolitically? Trump, of course, is going around saying, well, the missives from me that are in these files are fake. I didn't send the missives. Now, and while he admires Mandelson's political canny, it may be that Trump is now looking at Mandelson and thinking, well, why are you doing that? Just say it's fake news. But don't do a mea culpa interview and say, I'm terribly sorry, I made a mistake and I was misled. Just say, this is all nonsense. I simply didn't send these missives. So it's very, very embarrassing, and the state visit makes it acutely so. And I suspect, if Mandelson survives, he will be playing a rather lower profile role. I think he's about as likely to appear, prominently as Prince Andrew is on this state visit as a result of this. But if he doesn't, then his political legacy will be the tech deal that he and Vance were sort of working on with Peter Kyle and others. As ever with Mandelson, he generally gets very good reviews for his day job work. He was effectively the Deputy Prime Minister under Gordon Brown. When Brown couldn't make a decision, Mandelson was dragged in the dead of night to sign off all the papers in his role as First Secretary of State that the Prime Minister was not getting around to. He was decisive. He was generally regarded as one of the best business secretaries we've ever had. And yet his handling of his personal affairs has always been questionable. Friends of Peter that I know would say that his judgment about his own affairs and his advice to other people is brilliant, but he doesn't always follow it himself. And as a result, you've got this hideous conjunction of politics and showbiz, which is him and Epstein, and it just shows how those two worlds, when they mix, don't always mix very well. He appears to have had a friendship there that was inappropriate. He got into trouble under Tony Blair, not for any work he did as a minister, but because he took a loan from Geoffrey Robinson, another minister, to buy a house and then didn't declare it on his mortgage forms. And then he stupidly got involved in, seeking to procure a passport from the Hinduja brothers, who were also close friends and wealthy friends of his. So it's when there's a conjunction of work and play, it's a problem. And the Hinduja one was clearly bang to rights. I think a lot of people from the Blair era look back at the mortgage thing and think, if we'd circled the wagons a bit, we could actually have saved him. It wasn't probably necessarily a resigning batter. Blair himself thinks I moved too quickly on that. So it'll be interesting to see how Starmer handles this, because it is very, very much more complicated by the fact that Trump's in town and Trump is also embroiled in this.
Just finally, Tim, you mentioned just now that Farage has had a role in some of the preparation, at least in terms of speaking personally to Trump and giving him a history of Windsor Castle. Has there been any role at all for Kemi Badenoch or any Conservative Party figures in any of this? I mean, last time when we had JD Vance over in the Cotswolds, Badenoch didn't get a chance to meet with him then. Where are the Tories in all this?
Well, I mean, they've been leading the charge against Mandelson in the House of Commons. Badenoch made it a big focus of her performance at Prime Minister's Questions. But the short answer is there isn't much of a role for them. Badenoch was given the chance to see Vance over the summer and chose to go to the Isle of Wight and distribute ice creams instead, which I think almost everybody I know in the Conservative Party regards as a truly bizarre decision, and not one that suggests that her judgment is on point. I mean, lots of senior Tories will, I'm sure, be invited to the state dinner. Kemi Badenoch will surely be there. But when I reached out this week to various luminaries to see if they were likely to have any private time with Trump, I think the government and the palace will try and control this trip pretty tightly. I don't think you're going to see him waltzing off and having dinner with Boris Johnson or more FaceTime with Nigel Farage, and nobody in and around Kemi Badenoch has responded to my requests for information about when and where she might be meeting the president. So Boris Johnson even claimed that he didn't know when Trump was here. So, I mean, it's a far cry from the days of 2018 and 2019 when Trump was sort of pushing Boris as the great British figure of our time. It just shows what a lot of water under the bridge has happened. And actually, the interesting thing is Trump himself, who a lot of people thought was a total flash in the pan and a kind of very much a product of the moment in 2016 when he got elected, which a lot of mainstream politicians and establishment figures thought was going to pass, has proved a far more durable figure than any of the leadership of the Conservative Party over that period of time. Supposedly the party that has been the most successful, electoral force in the Western world. Well, Donald Trump's only the second president to come back and get a second non-consecutive term. He looks like he's making rather bigger impact on the world than Grover Cleveland did in his second go-round. So, the short answer is I'm sure they'll all be clamouring for a selfie at Windsor, but I don't think we're going to see any meaningful kind of meetings that are going to impact the future of the Conservative Party otherwise.
Tim, thank you very much for joining.